if you want to learn how I bought 54 houses this year with not only $0 out of pocket, but actually receiving $450,000 back at closing. Dude, holy crap. So you got paid $450,000 to buy 54 houses this year.
Correct.
All right. We finally got him on. Vince Gethings, how are you, buddy?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. It's a wonderful, sunshiny day down here in Austin, Texas. I don't know if you could say the same for Michigan.
It's not. It's definitely gray and about 40 degrees.
Beautiful.
Which the 40 degrees isn't bad. It's the gray. The lack of sunshine is definitely what kills your motivation out here.
I feel that, man. But I want to talk to you today about a bunch of stuff. You're an absolute baller real estate investor. You're a baller entrepreneur. A couple different angles, different avenues I want to take you down. I actually want to begin with a little teaser to people that are listening to stick around towards the end of the episode because Vince and I will dive a little bit more deep into the tactics and stuff. So I'm going to read 2 Facebook posts of yours. One is going to be the one that sparked the podcast because I immediately messaged you and I knew you were doing big things, but this was so punchy and the copywriting on this was so good that I was just like, this guy's got to come on the show. So here's Vince. And by the way, guys, on your Facebook, unfriend all the chumps. Like, defriend all the chumps. Just add people that are freaking cool because this is what my entire Facebook feed looks like. He says, December 28th, last closing of the year, Santa emoji. Nice touch. He goes, selling a single-family house out of the portfolio I purchased last year, a cool $150,000 payday. It's been a phenomenal year. If you want to learn how I bought 54 houses this year with not only $0 out of pocket, but actually receiving $450,000 back at closing. Dude, holy crap. So you got paid $450,000 to buy 54 houses this year.
Correct. And that was a combination of 2 transactions, and I'm about to pull off the third of that structure, making it the hat trick. So it's going to be pretty awesome if I can pull this off next week.
All right. Everyone's got to start somewhere, so I understand that you started small. It's okay, man. But no, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. But that's actually where I want to take us to. But where I want to begin is another post that I found just as equally interesting, and that's about your New Year's resolutions. So you have been working 12 to 16-hour days for as long as you can remember, and there are 3 things that you want to focus on to improve, and that's discipline, delegation, and systems and process, because you want to make the jump from 7 figures to 8 figures. So what are you at right now for net worth, and you're trying to jump up to 8 this year?
Yeah, so we're right about a little north of 6, right?
Okay.
And that has been, I feel getting to the first million was way easier than I thought. Like, it's more of a mental block than actually getting there. But once you get over $1 million ain't that much to get net worth of. Getting to the million was actually pretty quick. Getting to 1 to 5 wasn't terribly difficult. It was just having a set of principles and processes for business and what deals to look at, and then just doing it, like doing the process to get there. But then going from 5 to 10 has definitely been the hardest thing I've ever done. It's definitely, I think I had in that post or one of those, it's like everything that got me to 5 million is not going to get me to 10. And like every single day that has been more clear that I have to go back and I can't keep riding the wave of everything I've been doing the last 5 years or 6 years to get me to where I'm at. It's not going to get me there. So all the habits I've had, that grind mentality of I'm just going to grind it out, Elon Musk style, and work 18 hours a day, that's not working. The systems, everything, all the systems and processes I've built, and not just documentation wise, but actual program wise, like that, the actual SaaSes, they're starting to crack at the seams. So it's, when I'm going back and looking, my efficiencies and my effectiveness is starting to drop. It's becoming clear that, okay, I have to go back and restructure a lot of stuff in order to make that next level. So I don't know if that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners, but for me, that is definitely something that 5 to 10 jump or that 7 to 8 figure jump it's a game changer. You really have to transform who you are and how you're doing pretty much everything to get you there.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question is what parts of you need to die? What do you think? What parts of you need to die for you to become that next version?
Yeah, so me I'm coming from a military background. I was enlisted for 15 years. I got out as a E7, which is a Master Sergeant in the Air Force. So like my entire adult life has been become the expert technical on my wheelhouse. Nobody in the unit that I was in or whatever, just any senior NCO, like will know more about aircraft generation than me, right? That's your entire life is just getting planes in the air when you're expected to be the technical expert. And So be very good at that. And then just getting it done. A lot of it, the first 12 years of my career has just been grind it out. It's up to me in order to grind it out, getting that done. So it served me well in the military. My first few companies, or the first years of my companies, that grind it out mentality has been great. But now, when you talk about things that need to die, that lack of delegation that I have is the first thing that needs to die. So I'm rapidly hiring A players around me that I can start delegating tasks to. So that is definitely the first thing that needs to die. Is that? Do
you want to share the Costa Rica story?
Oh yeah, it's the one we were talking about. Yeah, so that one of the big things, go abundance and everything like that. So the lifestyle freedom that we're all trying to have. So we want to do this thing called world schooling, where you just pick a country and go live there for a month or whatever. Take the kids out of school and go do that. So we were doing the trial run in Costa Rica this year over the holiday break. And the first couple days went pretty well. First week went pretty well. Checked my email in the morning, things like that. But the start of that second week, it was every single day there was a fire. My office manager, that was day one. So I'm trying to handle that. And she's like, I'm sorry you're on vacation, but I just had to take this other offer, and the clock was ticking. So whatever, that happens. When you're a business owner, people quit. You just deal with it. You don't get mad about it or anything like that. But it just was frustrating that I was in another country that with limited Wi-Fi, limited phone service, things like that. So I'm trying to put up Indeed. I'm trying to interview people. So that was the one day. The next day, my property manager hits me with a bill for $96,000 that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting $30,000, $35,000, and it was 96. And he's like, "Oh yeah, there was receipts that weren't put in the system." I was like, "That's a lot of receipts." That was a big, that was a big area. We hashed it out. He was right from his perspective. I was right from mine. But once we got on the phone and went through everything, it was right. I actually owed. We ended up being $67,000. But that was a whole day waking up to a near $100,000 bill that you weren't planning on. That's never fun. So that was the next day, and then the next day was something else. So it was after that, it was 4 days of just really high stress, and somebody that was systems and processes oriented, and everything needs to be outlined and regimented and everything like that. And
SOPs,
I thought I had my shit together. It became clear that I wasn't as good as I thought I was in each of my companies when it comes to, are they capable of running processes and systems without me being there and handling problems without me. So that is something I had to come back and be, again, that awareness and honesty with myself, and okay, I need to go back and fix. There's a lot of gaps here that when I'm here, I don't see them, but take me out of the equation for a couple weeks, and those become abundantly clear. So overall, the Costa Rica experiment did highlight, I guess it was successful in that point. It definitely did highlight some issues that I had. I spent this quarter, Q1 of 23, fixing those gaps, and the next trip we're planning on going for a month, maybe to Europe or maybe New Zealand or something like that, and we'll try it again. That is the Costa Rica trip. It was a lot of fun. Highly recommend if anybody hasn't gone there. If you're a business owner and it's your first trip abroad or first trip outside of the company, it's probably gonna be fun.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and label that. Henceforth, we will call this the Action Academy Costa Rica experiment. To where whenever an entrepreneur comes on and they're feeling high and mighty, they feel like they've got it. I'm like, my brother in Christ, have you gone for a month to Costa Rica with your family and young children away from the business?
Yep.
Dude, what a way to stress test it. So there you go, guys. If you're listening to this and you think you've got it together, go give Costa Rica a shot and see how it works. And then that's how you'll know if the business is churning. Dude, that was a really cool way to start the show, man. That was a really cool example and punctuation of your goals for this new year. We talk a lot about fixing SOPs and fixing systems and operations. And you're somebody that was already very regimented. So if I were to peg you on a disc profile, I'd probably peg you as a high SC because of just how operating you are. But how do you go about, what pivots are you trying to make with your systems to be able to allow for that? Because you were already really regimented.
True, and I've used a lot of the popular ones. So I use Asana religiously. Everybody's connected. Google Calendar sync up.
You do EOS?
I follow EOS traction. And those things. So we do our level 10s, we do our pulse check. The problem is that I'm still the key person in all of those things. When it comes, I'm not necessarily changing a lot. There's a couple actual softwares I'm changing, but for the most part, I'm going the who not how route, where it's I need to find somebody that is more diligent than me to start running these things and making sure they're running smooth and going back and checking every week, every quarter to going through those workflows, going through those processes, and somebody that is chairing those level 10s and those post checks, that isn't me.
So like
that's the big route I'm going through. So I immediately I put a job ad out for the new office manager. I did things like the DISC profile. I used Culture Index to really find somebody that had that personality trait that I'm looking for, to have that personal accountability and that diligence trait. And then also hired virtual assistants. So I hired one executive assistant. They're actually interviewing one while we're shooting this. The office manager's interviewing the second one. So I'm going the who, not how route of getting the highly qualified people to help shore up my systems and processes rather than me just keep forcing them.
Nice. Let's hit on those a little bit for people that may be unfamiliar. And for guys listening, don't worry, we're going to get into the investing. But this stuff that we're talking about right now is actually significantly more beneficial for you as somebody that is either running a business or starting a business. This conversation that Vince and I are having right now is going to help you substantially more in your wealth building journey. So you said the Culture Index. I'm not familiar with that one. What's that one?
So Culture Index, it's a program like DISC and Intermetrics and a lot of other popular ones. And what it does is you take the survey, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes, and the way you take it is, so if I was going to hire a executive assistant, for example, or like a sales manager, office manager, I first take that as what I think the ideal office manager, executive assistant, so on is, and that creates like the ideal profile. And then once that is done, you get a link, and you send that link to all your applicants, all the people you think will be good for this, and they take it, and it has the two areas it grades them on is what their natural predisposition is, and then what they think they need to do in order to be successful at the job you're asking them to do. And then it compares those two things as well as against your ideal profile. So once you get that picture together, you'll be able to clearly see that either A, this person just doesn't understand the job that's expected of them because there's too much of a difference between their natural state and the state that they think they need to be in order to be successful at the job. Like those two profiles are really different. And the difference between their natural predisposition versus your ideal candidate. You don't want somebody to have to adapt too far in order to fit
out of their zone of genius.
People can only adapt for so long.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do and cut through that. And there are ones that are a lot more robust. I like this one. It's like 4 pages, one graph, and it's very clear. So now when I'm hiring, and I put the job ad on Indeed, I don't even look at the resumes. As soon as somebody hires, I'll get maybe 10 people hire a day for a job. I just send them the link to that survey. Say, hey, please, thanks for applying. Please fill out this survey. And then I'm looking at who completed the survey, and I only call them if they match like 80% or higher on my ideal candidate. Then I will go back, disqualify everybody that was 80% or less, and then I'm only talking to the people that are like 80 or 90% or higher on that survey. And then I'm looking at those. And to give you context of how much time that saves for anybody that has employees or is looking to get employees, one of the biggest time sucks you have is like that HR recruiting, because you'll waste so much time reading resumes or doing interviews, and it's just mind-numbing.
Onboarding.
Onboarding, all this stuff. And then the worst part is when you waste so many hours
training,
and then just not even training. So you waste so many hours just doing interviews or just setting up interviews, just have people flake on you and things like that. And then you hire somebody, and then you do so many hours onboarding, and then just to have them not work out 2-3 weeks later or months later, and it's wow, that was a huge waste of time. So as a business owner, that is one of the most painful things. So that's what this is supposed to do. So it's, for example, my office manager position that I had to hire in Costa Rica, I put that job ad out. Over 100 people applied. I interviewed 3. So that's how much time I saved. Like the top 3 people that matched, I interviewed them, picked one of them, and she's crushing it. Their 3rd week on the job.
Yeah, and hiring, especially when you're, what's the size of your companies right now?
Koala. Headcount. So Koala is the biggest one. I have 14 employees in that one.
Yeah, so especially when you're early on in your hiring process, like those first couple key hires, if you mess that up, like that could be the life or death of your company.
Yeah,
honestly.
Absolutely.
So that's huge. Hit a little bit about DISC, because I love DISC. So I'm a high ID.
I don't know much about DISC. I think we have to rely on your expertise on that. So this one,
I forgot what I forgot what they stood for.
So this is kind of what
save me, man.
Oh no, I didn't. So the Culture Index, it grades you in it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different areas. So it grades on like how good you are at problem solving, how good you are at like people solving, how good you are on either multitasking or patience, and how good you are at like finishing tasks or delegation, things like that, and holding people accountable and yourself accountable. And then it also will grade on your, they call them energy units, but it's essentially like how good you are at like adaptability. And then
I've got it in front of me now. So DISC, here's what it stands for. So DICS. D is for dominant, I is influential, C is compliant, S is steady. So
it's almost the same things.
Yeah, the theory behind it and the hypothesis behind it is there's a book in the Gino Wickman series. So you got Traction, which is EOS, and you've got Rocket Fuel, which is the visionary integrator. So the visionary is like the guy or the girl that's the person with all the vision. And that's normally like a high ID. So that's a person that's just, here's where we're going, here's what we're doing. And then you need an SC person who's a very operations systems process. They love scheduling. They love organizing. They are the ones that clear the calendars, balance the books. So that's where the DISC comes in, because if you have two people that are working together and they're both high Ds or high IDs, you're just going to implode because you're the same person. There's no complementary skill sets there. So that's where DISC profile comes in.
Yeah,
man, you're supposed to save me
very
there.
Similar. This is very similar. The culture index is very similar to that, and I don't know. I like it. It works. It's not overly complicated. I have one that's like the inner metrics, and I've used before. It's good, but it's so much information. You get a report on somebody. It's like 15 pages. Yeah, and I'm just like, I don't need it. Like, for some people might geek out on that. No. And just need to be cleaner. Give me one graph that shows this is how this person is. Like the DISC is like that. Anyway,
Dude,
yeah.
Another good one I
I
found ironically is I got this piece of advice. I didn't ever think of it, but I did that with one of my assistants before, and that's love languages.
Okay.
Yeah, believe it or not, just to see how they really enjoy feedback. Because you have the 5 love languages, so like physical touch would probably not be the one that's HR appropriate. But like you can be able to tell if it's like words of affirmation, if it's acts of service, if it's quality time. Do they want more of those one-on-one interactions with you? Do they want more of the, hey, you did a fantastic job, let me spotlight you to the team, kind of stuff like that? And
that's interesting.
That's actually been a cool pivot. But for people listening, like all of the stuff that we're saying, I don't care if you're making $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 a month. If you don't have these systems in place and you don't develop the skills that Vince and I are talking about, you are not going to be able to go to Costa Rica for a month. And that's the Costa Rica experiment. So, Vince, before we move forward, let's go back a little bit. I'm curious about your first million because you said that it was a lot easier than you anticipated. Walk me through that process going to your first million.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in the military, Air Force. I was stationed at Travis Air Force Base. It was like 2013, and I wanted to get into my first VA house hack. But the one I did was pretty much where you buy the crappiest house
in the nicest neighborhood.
In the nicest neighborhood that you can afford that will still pass the VA inspection. So that's the difference, right? Because it still has to pass the VA inspection, which is a little bit harder to do. So we did that. It was 2013, bought a house, flipped it while I lived in it for a couple of years, sold it in 2016. And then that's where I got my seed capital to start my first company, Villanatics. We cashed out of that. I think I netted $130,000 on that first house. And then I was like hooked. So then it was just like, okay, how do I just go all in on real estate? Let's figure this stuff out. Because I was pretty big on like stock investing for like since 2006 to 2015. So around 10 years of stock investing. So I was like big in value investing. I read all like the Warren Buffett books and Benjamin Graham and
kind of
all
like
those
Bogleheads too.
Yeah, I had them all. So I read all those. So I was like big into that stuff. And then I was just like, it was just really hard I was getting like frustrated because it was like you learn the principles like value investing, and then you look at like stock market the last 15 years, and it's like trying to find any company that remotely will match those principles became harder and harder. Then I discovered real estate. Brandon Turner had his first 2 books just published around that time, so I read them, which is like the book on rental property investing. And it's a very good beginner book. It'll definitely get you all the information you need to get into your first couple deals. Like, you don't need anything else. So I read that book, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go buy some rental properties. So I didn't buy them in California. I went and bought them back in Michigan because that's where I had a competitive advantage. And I think that's key when you're buying your first couple deals. And what I do? So I drained my 401k. I drained everything, my brokerage accounts and everything. So I had my 130 grand. Drained all the money I saved up to that point, and I went to Michigan. And my original goal was I wanted to buy 20 units in 10 years because that's where I was at in my career. I was 10 years from retirement in my career, and I only wanted 20 units because that would augment my pension to where I would be living comfortably with the mindset I had at that time. And then I read the 10X rule, and I was like, this is weak. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do 20 units as fast as possible. So that was my 10-year goal that I was so focused on, was 20 units in 10 years. So I was like, that's a duplex a year. That's, it's smart. It's all this stuff. And then Grant Cardone stopped being a you-know-what. And I was like, all right, I got to ramp this up. So I ended up doing 20 units in months. So my 10-year goal in 18 months. And that was going from California back to Michigan and finding duplexes and fourplexes. Again, that's all I knew, was just like bigger pockets investing. At that time, they were very much focused on
house hack vibes.
They were big on like the Burr strategy and the duplexes, the fourplexes. Commercial really wasn't in their ecosystem yet. So that's all I knew. So I was going out. I was a couple deals I found on the MLS. That was my first couple, and then I was like, all right. Then I couldn't find any there. So then I started calling ads on like Facebook and Craigslist for like rentals. Oh, I got my duplex for rent. I would call them like, hey, I'm not looking to rent, but I'm looking to buy. You want to sell it? And then they'd be like, oh, yeah, actually. So that's how I bought my next couple. And then I hit a kind of roadblock there. So then I started pulling lists from like ListSource and doing mail campaigns and things like that. And then that's how I bought my next couple. So my first 18 months, it was like a lot of hustling. But again, it was a 10-year goal, hit it out in 18 months. And that's how I got started. And that was my first. So that was 2016, and I probably hit my $1 million net worth somewhere around 2018-ish, 2019-ish.
Yeah, so off of that,
it was a very basic. Like, I didn't do any kind of crazy mentoring programs. I didn't have to spend a lot of money. It was like literally Brandon Turner's 2 books, maybe $300 on ListSource, pulling owner lists and skip tracing and things like that. And just calling people, calling landlords. Hey, you looking to retire? You looking to get out of this deal? Let's do it off market.
Yeah, dude, I love that. Yeah, I remember back when I was like doing the same thing. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do a house hack a year. And ironically, I was just looking at the math, and I haven't invested in real estate in 2 years, which is insane to think about. But I'm not going to invest in it this year, so that's going to be 3 years of me not investing in real estate, coming from somebody that talks about real estate investing 24/7. But it's just, I found my niche. I found my zone, which we can get into with yours here shortly. But it's just, in the beginning, you go solo dolo, and you're like, okay, I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know yet. And you're like, I'm going to go slow and steady and build the confidence. And so you took the actions. Now, I will say you probably had a bit of a heads up because of your military background, and you were used to implementing and action taking and all of that. Because a lot of people will hem and haw and get analysis paralysis. So now you just joined GoBundance. So I'm curious, coming from somebody that started it off on your own, I don't think you've been in too long, but what have been some of the changes that you've seen just being in a mastermind group in general, or increasing your exposure?
So I've been in that GoBundance since July of 22, and I really didn't do much the first 3 months. I just poked around the different groups and everything like that. But I have been in other masterminds. So I'm in the Wheelbarrow Profits Academy. I'm a coach for them, Jake and Gino. So I've been in that kind of mastermind type of world for the last few years. And that way, when my growth for being a real estate investor, that's how I found them, was in 2018. I jumped on with them because I wanted to learn multifamily, because I saw a lot of people doing these bigger deals, and I wanted to learn how. And that's when I was like, okay, now, to your point, I know what I know, and I know there's stuff I don't know. Yeah. I was aware that there was a whole nother world on commercial real estate that I don't know and other people do because they're crushing it. So that's why I went out and I found the mastermind. And that was 2018. I'm still in now in that one, and that helped me really refine my commercial real estate skills. And now I coach for them as well. GoBundance was, again, you hit kind of levels, you hit ceilings, and you have to go out and find different resources to take you to that next level. And that's how I felt last year in 22, was there was other things that I was doing that didn't fit the current mastermind I was in. Starting businesses, work, doing bigger things as far as my trust and estates and charities and life, that life freedom, the lifestyle freedom that GoBundance is really big about, the pillars and all that, the health and everything. And that was just something I knew I was missing something else, and I knew people had these. So I'm all about masterminds because they will shorten the time curve to anything you're looking to do.
Yeah, and that's been my experience too, because the only reason that I'm able to have these conversations and talk and have these perspectives that I do is because I have this show, and people sometimes ask me, they don't anymore just because my network's kind of gone bananas, but people would ask me in the beginning, they're like, what the hell, dude? Where are these people coming from? And I'm just like, dude, I've been friends with them for 2 years. I'm just now interviewing them live on the podcast. And so it's been super fun, and doing this is really cool. I want to go over, let's take that pivot to talk about how you knocked out this strategy this last year. And then also, I want you to plug your event at the end as well, because we need to get people there, as many that can go.
Absolutely. So I have three main companies I have. So I have Tri-City Equity Group, which is essentially my syndicate, and it pretty much operates like all other syndicates do. We go out, find value-add real estate in growing markets, mainly sticking to the South, right? We're doing a lot in Dallas area right now. And that's pretty much what that company does. We have about 50, 60 million in assets under management in that company, about a little over 500 doors. And that one just plugging along. Pretty well-oiled machine. When we find a high-quality asset, we'll go down, syndicate it, and crush it. Then I have my personal rental portfolio, which right now I have about 100 units in, and that's my company Villanatics. I own that one 100%. And that's here with me in Michigan. Me just taking advantage of opportunities that come up while I'm here. Michigan's not, at least where I'm at in Michigan, is not that sexy of a market to like bring in partners and syndicate with, but I still see good like smaller deals, like 6 units, 40 units, things like that. House flips, I flip a lot of houses still. So that's when I just do 100% by myself while I'm currently living here in Michigan. And then I have my franchise, which is Koal Insulation. It's a 12-territory franchise that does home and business insulation. We do spray foam and cellulose and things like that. And that has been crushing it these last 2 quarters, really. It's only a year old, but these last 6 months has really been crazy, and I'm looking to pour a lot of fuel on to that. So my strategy, looking back at every year, we do a big kind of deep dive review of what worked, what didn't, what made us happy, what frustrated the most out of our business activities, me and my team. And looking at 22, looking at where we think the market's going and where we want to go personally as investors, we are going to be focusing a lot more on growing and developing businesses, either buying through M&A activities, starting franchises, or just starting our own concepts, and focusing a lot on growing businesses because businesses throw off a ridiculous amount of cash flow. Compared to real estate. It's not even close.
That's what I'm doing with online business, man.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like I thought cash flow in real estate was good, and I just didn't know.
You don't know what you don't know. That's why I'm focusing 100% on action to capital, because people don't realize my thing's a recurring, it's like an annual thing for the community. And it's like I can get recurring cash flow on the treadmill.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Growing businesses, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot more work. To me, it's a lot more risk, too, because there's no like underlying value to it.
Asset underneath it, you're creating the asset, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot more risk, but a lot more reward. So I'm going to be focusing on, me and my partner, focus on growing our franchises, growing our businesses, acquiring more businesses, get that cash flow up, and then we take all that cash flow, that free cash flow, and we buy high-quality value-add real estate, mainly looking at like B-class value-add in the hot markets, in the North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas markets. And that's because that's where all your tax benefits are, right? That's all your wealth preservation is all in that high-quality commercial real estate. So we're taking the best, as we look back of when we really started ramping up in 2019, 2020, and looking back, and I'm actually flying out to Hawaii again 2 weeks to do this again for 22. But looking back, okay, what really worked? Like when we're looking at our net worth and we were looking at our cash flow statements, like where did most of our net worth increases come from? Where did most of our cash flow come from? You know, what was our biggest time sucks that didn't, or low ROI activities and things like that. So we go through a pretty big deep dive. It lasts about 3 to 4 days, and that's what we did last year. And then again, we're going to do it here in a couple of weeks, and then we just keep tuning and keep refining what our strategy is. And that's where we're going. We're going deeper into more businesses and more high quality real estate in the JV structure versus the syndication structure. We're still doing syndications. Love them. It's a great tool to take a piece of real estate down. But looking at us, where we want to go and where we want our families to go and things like that, the JV structure just serves us better. So we're going to be doing more JVs as those opportunities come around.
So I guess when you're doing the JV structure instead of the syndication, I guess that allows for your velocity to increase, right? Because you're not beholden to investor capital as it's taking time, and you don't have that 5-year balloon. Now you can just get in, get out.
Both, right? So I can either have that one, I have more control over the deal. So even though I'm the sponsor in KP, investors will always come first on a syndication, or you have that fiduciary responsibility. Their interests will always come first. And usually we're aligned. But the parts where we're not aligned is maybe we find a high quality piece of real estate that we want to hold for 10 years. Like I don't want to ever sell this thing. But we end up syndicating it, and your investors normally want to have a return in that 5-year cycle, that 3 to 5 year cycle. They want their capital back. So that is the syndication life cycle. The JVs, if I want to flip out of this thing in 18 months, or if I want to hold this thing for 10 years with 2 or 3 people, I have that ability. And obviously with JV structure, you hold a lot more equity.
All right. I don't know if you want to share, man. But I'm curious. How'd you get paid $450K to buy houses?
Yes. So I'm going to pull off the hat trick, like I said earlier, of this strategy, and it's worked out really well for me, and I'm going to share this because somebody will make $1 million off this.
I'm turned on right now.
Fine. So what I did is, like I said before, I have Villonautics, which is my personal company here in Michigan, and I have my personal rental portfolio as well as my house flip company, and I got approached with buying, this was last year, a portfolio of houses that, I think it was 50 houses. The first batch was 50 houses, and these are like C-class houses, 2% deal all day. Where I was buying them I bought them at $34,000 a piece.
Ooh.
And the occupancy
sounds like a headache.
What's that?
Sounds like a headache.
Oh, it was a headache, but it was worth it. So the first deal, that was the first one, it was 50 houses, and it was somewhere north of $2 million, something like that. It was $34. I know it was $34,000 a unit, so whatever that comes up to. And these are older homes, C-class, definitely headaches. That's why I have a property manager. But they make great flips for your FHA type clients, where they're looking for their first starter home, 3-2 starter homes, 1,200 square feet. That's what this house was, like nothing extravagant. We're not putting granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and all this stuff. We're just clean, safe, habitable, affordable housing. So that first deal, it was like 54 houses. I didn't have all the capital to take it down, so what I did is I found a partner to come, and we split it up. So we split the portfolio. I think the first one I took about 24 houses, and he took the 30. I marked his, because we had such a good deal on it, like the 34,000 was like, we're like basement wholesale prices on these, like they were just looking to offload them. I marked his houses up like a wholesale fee, like $2,000 to $3,000, and then at closing, I took that fee and used that as my downstroke on my 24 houses. So the first transaction, 24 houses, once my fee got applied, I only had to come to the table with $16. So I bought my first 24 houses in this strategy for $16. Right? And then that kind of filled the coffers for we'll call it inventory. That filled the inventory for my house flipping company. So now my house flipping company is just stacked up for flipping houses for the next whatever year or two. So that's great. Fast forward 3 months later, another broker comes to me saying, "Hey, I heard you bought this package of houses. I have another one. Are you interested in?" And it was 30 houses, same exact houses. You know, the older, probably around 1950s, 1960s builds, 3-2s, things like that, lower end homes. And I said, "Yep, I want it. But this time I want to try to do it without having the partner." I was like, "I want to do this one all on my own because the first one worked out so well." And to give you a context of how well the first one worked out, I went to the table with $16, so I bought 24 houses for $16. But my equity, when we got the appraisal back, I bought my house there's $34,000 the average price. The average appraised value across the portfolio was $78,000.
Is this pre-reno?
What's that?
Is this pre-reno or
like the appraisal that the bank did. The appraisal that the bank did. So at closing, the value on my house is the average was $78,000, and my cost basis was $34,000. So I had like $40,000 times 24 houses. Like at closing, that was my equity.
What's it like to be God's favorite, man?
So
because I've never had a house overappraised. All of my homes have only underappraised.
Yeah,
every time.
I don't know.
That's $960,000 of equity for $16
at closing. Yeah, so that was
before renovations.
Before as is. And to show those aren't fluffy numbers, I'm actually, because I sell those houses. So when a tenant moves out, I list them. So I have a house right now that I just we listed it pretty much as is. We went and cleaned it up a little bit, but I did not do a renovation on it. Just cleaned it up. And That just got an offer on it at 77.9, so at 78,000, right at where the appraisal it was worth. They just got an FHA offer on it, and that was like it's sitting in my inbox. I got to sign it today. So, like,
what was the motivation behind the person that was the seller?
So they had a partnership that they wanted to dissolve. They didn't want to damage the partnership. So their choice was just to sell the assets to preserve the relationship.
So it was basically your relationship with the broker that was able to yield this.
Yes.
Then they sent it to your desk.
Yes, and I also knew the owner too. I know the owner too, and I was just like, hey, Vince is a great guy.
So play in your sandbox.
Competitive advantage.
Yep.
Like I said before, I had a competitive advantage here because of those relationships. So that was the first deal. Fast forward a couple months, broker said, yeah, I heard you bought that portfolio. I have another one. Same thing, out-of-state guy bought a bunch of these houses in the 2008-2009 crash when they were just like, they're buying them for like $10,000 foreclosures that were just everywhere at the courthouse steps and stuff like that kind of story. And he was doing like land contracts and everything like that, and he was just coming with them. So I was like, look, I'll do the same thing. I'll buy them, no contingencies. I'll take them, and no issue. So that one, my cost basis was a little higher. It was, I think it was like maybe closer to 40, maybe 38,000 a door, 36, 37,000. So somewhere around there, a little bit higher than the first batch I remember. But they also were a little bit nicer. He's replaced a lot of the roofs, a lot of the windows, things like that. But they were still in quality and demographics.
$38,000 with a new roof.
Yeah, it was nuts. So this is the one. So that was the one I was like, all right, I'm going to do the same thing. So I went, talked to my lender, I was like, this is the plan. You guys listening, because this is the $1 million mic drop. So you want to go and you want to find a lender. You want to develop those relationships with your credit unions are better for this than banks. Credit unions have a lot more flexibility. So you want to meet all your credit unions in the area and you say, I have a great deal and I want to do 80% or 85% or whatever it is, 75% of the appraised value at closing and not the purchase price. If there's a delta there, I want the difference at closing. Because I'm in the market and I'm doing deals, I go around, I talk to people and say, who can do this? And I found a lender that could do this. So, because I already know, I'm the comps, because I just bought the first portfolio. So I know the comps because I am the comps. I bought the first portfolio 3 months ago. So
you go to the bank, I am the bank.
Right? Yeah, like I already know in my head, I'm like, I am the comps. Like when the appraiser goes and gets comps to appraise this second batch, he's going to be looking at the properties I just bought. And it's the same, ended up being the same appraiser. And like I said, he appraised them at $78,000 a door. So I already know, doing the math in my head, $36,000 cost basis. It's going to be worth $78,000 a door because it's the same product. And I'm like, so I know there's like a $40,000 delta in there. The difference this time is I know that the delta is going to be above their 80% or 85 LTV. So what I want is I want that difference at closing. And so I found a lender that would approve that. And they're like, yep, I will. They didn't know how much. They didn't know what I know. They didn't know how much over it was going to be. But they were like, yeah, we'll give you 85% LTV based off of appraised value. And if there's a difference, you can get that at closing. So at closing, it like my 20 or my 30 houses appraised, it was like 4 million or something like that. 2.2 million, and my cost base was like 1 point something. And so they ended up writing a check at closing for $459,000. And they had to go get it. She called me and she's like, we weren't expecting that. I had to go up all the way to the bank president or the president, everything like that. I was like, hey, that was the deal, right? You said you were going to, and they ended up approving it. So the second batch of homes I did, I bought 30 houses, got back at closing $459,000. And turned around and bought a badass Airbnb with it in Hawaii. Just reinvested it. Boom. And so that's making more money for me. So that was the second thing. And then now I have the third deal like that. This one's actually apartments relationship and going into the reinforcing the importance of building relationships in your current market. Like you said, your sandbox, I said competitive advantage. The very first property I bought was a 4-unit in this town. In 2016, that guy ended up calling me, 5 years later, 2016, was that 7 years later almost? 6 years later, saying, hey, are you still looking at property to buy? I'm like, yep. He's like, oh, my dad's having health problems and blah, blah, blah. And he's getting up there in years, looking to retire. He's got this 40 unit. Do you want to buy it? I'm like, yep. And now we got a great deal on that. I already knew, as soon as he said the price, I was like, done. I'll do no contingency. I'll buy it. And he's the original builder. So original builder of the property, owned it since 1975. The idea was to keep it forever, and then the kids obviously have other plans. So got that one off market. We're closing on that one next week. Went back to the same lender. Got this property.
This is coming back.
So does that deal still stand where if there's a delta between the cost basis and the appraised value, and that difference uses my downstroke, and it looks like I'm going to get it again. Like I said, we're going to probably close. By the time this airs, I'll close. But it looks like it does. I know the appraised value on that ended up being 1.7. My cost basis was 1.4. And they're looking to do a 85% LTV based off appraised value, which equals a 1.45. So at closing, I'm going to be getting a 40 unit and 50 grand in my pocket. So
plug your mastermind.
Yeah, so that's the hat trick on there. And that's the stuff we do. And that's the stuff we're going to talk about in our mastermind, is how to set up those structures, how to develop those relationships. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to plug it. But it's going to be June 29th to July 2nd in the big island of Hawaii. We have a 5-star resort. It's going to be amazing. It's the Hawaii Millionaire's Mindset, the blueprint. And this is all we talk about. It's going to be 2 days talking about starting businesses, scaling businesses, either on the franchise side or your own concept, as well as multifamily commercial real estate, how those mix together, developing a strategy where your business and your real estate strategies complement each other and grow. And then we're also going to have our personal estate planners presenting, our personal CPAs presenting. We're bringing our lenders that we use. Everybody you'll have access to, just like we do. And it's in Hawaii. So I'm bringing my family out there. We're going to be out there for a week. So you want to start mixing that lifestyle freedom that we were talking about early in the show. You want to start mixing your business with your family and do these working vacations. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. And where can people find out about this and find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. It's probably the easiest way to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn too, but I don't check that as much. But you can find me on Facebook, find me on LinkedIn. TriCityEquity.com is the website we use the most, but Facebook's probably the easiest. And then the Hawaii Millionaire's Mindset, the blueprint, you want to Google that, and you'll go to that website to check out more about the event. And if you have any questions about that, reach out to me on that as well.
You got it, brother. Man, appreciate you coming on, brother. That was even cooler than I expected. That was a super fun one, man.
Hopefully it has.
Yeah, so everyone go check out the mastermind, check out the event, check out Vince, shoot him a friend request on Facebook if you feel like making money and being around people that are, so that you could be like me and have really cool Facebook posts. That's why I'm on there all day. My screen time is so high. So with that, this has been Vince O'Brien with the Action Academy podcast, signing off.